Welcome to EVONA Origin Stories, the space podcast where we look to bring you extraordinary leaders from within the sector and their fascinating stories of early life, career, and how they broke into the space industry.
Our guest today is a true advocate and passionate ambassador for promoting diversity in STEM, making space accessible for everyone. Most importantly, he is obsessed with the sustainability of our planet and the betterment of humankind. He's got more accolades over his career than I can list, from the US Air Force to NASA and the University of Texas. He is an astrodynamicist, a space environmentalist, TED Fellow, Professor, Spacecraft Navigator, Chief Scientist, and most recently, a co-founder of Privateer Space with Alex Fielding and the infamous Steve Wozniak. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Moriba Jah. Hey Moriba, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. About yourself?
Not too bad. Long time no speak. How's things?
Always busy and juggling, my friend.
Yeah, juggling many things.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, look, I just want to start by saying thanks ever so much for taking the time to do this with us today, and speaking to me and our listeners. I really appreciate it. Obviously, things have stepped up for you, like, significantly since we last spoke as well. Privateer, which I want to get into on this show, but I just wanted to sort of take the time just to kind of say thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak to us today.
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. Well, if it's okay with you, we'll just kind of dive right into it. It'd be great to start from the early days of Moriba. Talk us through where you started in life, where you grew up, school, college, that sort of thing, and sort of eventually how you found your way into your early career in the US Air Force.
Yeah, I mean, I was born here in the United States, San Francisco, actually, and I had a very challenging, I guess, childhood. My mom is from Haiti, father from Sierra Leone. They had me. They didn't get along. Parents got divorced when I was 2. Went and lived with my grandparents in Monterey, California, a few hours away. Father had visitation rights, and at the age of 6 or 7, he kidnapped me. 9 days later, police found me at some place in the Bay Area, put me on a plane back to my mom. My mom was fearful that my father would find me again, and turns out that my grandfather had a cousin that lived in Caracas, Venezuela, so we just up and left the country, man, and fled to Venezuela at the age of 7. So that's where I grew up. So I grew up in Caracas. Didn't speak a lick of Spanish, but learned it along the way, and pretty much was in Venezuela throughout the end of my high school. Went to a military school, boarding school for high school. By then, my mom remarried this guy from Venezuela, and once I was done at 17, I was ready to tackle the world, come back to the United States, and I enlisted in the US Air Force. And it was my job to guard nuclear missiles, Minuteman II, Minuteman III systems in Montana. Growing up in Caracas, I just, there's a lot of light pollution, a lot of, a lot of city lights. And so on a good night, you might see the moon, but not much else. And so in Montana, man, it was like the first time in my life that I had been in a place with such dark skies. And it was extremely moving to me because, I had never realized that the universe was so populated. I'm like, wow, it's not just like emptiness, it's like, it's not just dark, like there's a bunch of stuff there. And that juxtaposed with dots moving across the sky that weren't planes, they weren't meteors, they were actually satellites reflecting sunlight. That's what got me interested in astrodynamics.
Awesome. And thanks for going through that. And I guess through that, how did you kind of from getting into the US Air Force, how did that come around, getting into that? And then also from your time serving in the US Air Force, how did you kind of segue your way into the space industry? And I guess now that you're here and you've been sort of living and breathing it for so many years now, it'd also be cool to hear what is it you love most about the space sector.
Yeah, so as a security guard in the Air Force, it wasn't like people really took me seriously when I said I wanted to study this stuff. I'm like, people are like, oh, there's no way. Like, you carry a gun. Like, what are you actually going to do in the space industry was kind of like the sentiment. And, but yeah, I mean, I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Arizona. My own academic advisor advised me against studying aerospace engineering. He was like, he gave me the Yoda, you're too old to begin the training kind of thing. He was like, oh, you're 23, you're already too old. You never took calculus in high school. It's been 6 years. Like, you're going to get lapped and you're not going to make it through the program. And, it was extremely challenging, difficult. I was the one that was getting B's. I was not an A student. I had to stay up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning doing calculus homeworks and stuff like that. But yeah, look, I muddled through it and, able to find my way in the grad school, thanks to the late Professor George Bourne at University in Colorado, who believed enough in me to give me a chance to show to myself that I was capable. And this ended up resulting in me getting a job at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, my dream job, to be a spacecraft navigator working on Mars missions. And so that's how I got into that.
Awesome. No, thanks for going through that. I love those stories, especially when someone tells you can't do it and you go on and do it anyway. And I think that's a part of the whole reason why we started doing this show, is to kind of try to, I guess, demystify the space sector and kind of make it accessible for everyone, regardless of where you come from, your background, anything at all like that. Space is for everybody. So I love the fact that you've pushed on there and went through. And what is it now? I guess, like I say, now that, you've been involved in so many different areas of space, and obviously recently setting up Privateer, which we'll get into as the show goes on. But what is it for you? What is like the most special thing about being in the space sector? What do you love about it most? The people, the technology? What is it that kind of draws you to the sector, and what you love about the sector so much?
I think that space is, ultimately it's where we come from. It's where we need to go back to, in a way. It is the future. Humanity will meet its certain end unless we're successful at thriving elsewhere in the universe, not even multi-planet. We need to be interstellar. We need to thrive around another sun. And we're nowhere even close to being capable of doing that. And so that's what I find exciting. That's what's driving me, is to try to do what I can to extend humanity's expiration date and contribute positively towards that. So those are the things that I'm excited about. And I think, personal satisfaction in the industry is really trying to find truth. Given a variety of data and information, biased, corrupt, incomplete, how do I solve the Sherlock Holmes questions of what's up there? Who does it belong to? Can I predict how it's going to behave? Can I develop a body of evidence to hold people accountable for their behaviors in space? Those are the things that excite me and drive me.
Absolutely. Amazing. That kind of leads on to the next thing I want to talk to you about. And like I say, we kind of have a similar passion for the whole demystifying the industry and making space accessible for everyone. We collaborated a couple of years ago on the Space Spectra series and had Bianca on us, etc. And I know it's obviously a part of your day-to-day work and your career and your sector, but I can tell to you it's something that is definitely close to heart. It definitely drives your passion. And I think it would be great to know, and our listeners as well, is where does that come from? What drives your passion with all the STEM work that you do, the various schools and universities you work with and work at? Why is that so important to you? Where does that sort of passion and drive come from?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I've had a pretty, in many respects, complicated life, and I've gone through my own sets of traumas and that sort of stuff. And, one of the things that back when I was 16 in military school, something kind of unfortunate happened. I was accused of something that I had not done, and nobody cared about hearing me or my side or any of these things. And I was pretty much locked up for several months without even being able to go home. I got very depressed, and I didn't want to live anymore. And I just lost the desire to live. And entertained a lot of suicidal ideation. And in this space of kind of hitting rock bottom, man, where I'm like, I don't care. Like, people tried to hurt me in all different ways. And finally, I'm like, I just don't care. Like, I don't. And so in that space of nothingness, I was actually very surprised, Rich. I was surprised at what I found, because in this void of being completely stripped of everything that I cared about, I somehow got in touch with what seemed to be an infinite ocean of love and compassion. It was like a foundational fabric. And I was very surprised at this. And it seemed like my path in life could either, the quick path was to succumb to my anger and all these things and just be on that roller coaster, or the more difficult path would be for me to find a way to make my pain be of service to other people. And that's what I've chosen. So my thing is, I feel honored and grateful to have this human experience. Many things sadden me, but I have a lot of hope within my heart, within my soul. I feel that my life can be useful to humanity in positive ways. I believe in the interconnectedness of all things. I believe that stewardship is what we need to embrace. I believe that action from a place of love and compassion is what needs to happen more pervasively. I want to show people evidence that we are all interconnected, and that our cultural differences, while need to be celebrated, do not define us as being separate from each other in the ways that we seem to be living our lives. And so that's my motivation, man. My motivation is to be aligned with this kind of inner ideal of human liberation through love and compassion. And I just find an avenue to do that through my work in space.
Absolutely. No, that beautifully put. I think for sure, a life of happiness is definitely when you can find service and how to serve others and compassion as well. So thanks ever so much for sharing that. I'd be interested to know as well, how do you, with all that experience and those unfortunate experiences that you had, and how do you kind of utilize your resources, your tools within space and the work that you do to help people and to, I guess, better humankind, and with that piece around your resources and being able to serve other people?
I think that those that know me can recognize that wherever I go, I'm all about destroying walls of just BS and just crap. And the space industry in many respects is very insular and is comprised by many people that believe themselves to be the elite, whatever the hell that means. People that try to say, hey, you should care about space, but you can't be a part of it because you don't have several PhDs, or you're not, you don't have the resources to like fly and go up with Jeff Bezos, or you're not this, or you're not that. Space has a lot of you're not this, that, or the other. And my message is, look at me. I'm evidence that this is for anybody. At times in my life, man, when I didn't even have enough money, I ate from a dumpster. I spent months eating from the garbage. I came from meager means. I consider myself a blue collar PhD. As an academic, I followed a very non-traditional path. So I am evidence that these walls, barriers are all BS, and that space is for everybody. My main thing to help people is to break these things down and show people, expose people to my humanity in this, and say, you can do both. You can be in STEM, you can be in art, you can love and care, and communicate with people that is very direct and not condescending and not pejorative, and being very inclusive. You can do all those things. I'm evidence that that is possible.
Absolutely. No, very well put. And I think that kind of ties on nicely to the next thing as well. I wanted to touch on failures and achievements. Obviously, you've probably seen with various social media platforms, I think, obviously, the things that you've achieved has been unbelievable, especially in the past few years, that some people can only dream of achieving in their lifetime. But I think when certain things are posted on what you see now, especially the younger generation, like Instagram, Twitter, that kind of stuff, everybody sees the highlight reel of success and like the end product, but no one really sees the kind of the work, the grind, the sacrifice that led to that and leading up to those achievements. So I guess over the years, whether it be career, personal, what would you consider your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that failure?
I feel that I'm failing every 5 to 6 years. It's like, my first failure was not being a lifelong career military person. And not that I couldn't be, but I felt that I got to the point where I was told, shut up and color. I made lots of sacrifices to improve myself. Other people benefited from it, and I was kind of left behind, and I just didn't take it. But that meant no more career military thing for me. I wanted to be an officer, and I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, but that didn't happen for me. So I left. I went to undergrad, and I don't know. I mean, I wanted to be an academic, but I quickly realized that probably wasn't for me. I mean, I got my degrees, but it seemed like academia was something for other people and not myself. And so, once I got my degrees, I punched out of that. And when I was at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, my PhD work, I think, was quite innovative. And I came to the point where I could either just do the typical job of getting stuff to other planets, or I could be innovative, but, JPL was not a place that embraced that innovation. And so I left, went to the Air Force in Maui. I try to be creative and innovative there. I developed a whole different set of skills, and my research reached heights that I never thought were possible. I learned so much. And then at some point on Maui, I was kind of voted off the island, so to speak, kind of like a bad episode of Survivor. So I failed at being able to stay there with I wanted to stay there with my family. I cried when I realized I had to leave Maui. I literally cried, sobbing, because I didn't want to leave the island, but I failed to be able to find a way to stay there. And then I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to work for the Air Force Research Lab there. And same thing, great heights, great achievements, things that scaled in ways I couldn't have imagined. But then at some point, after I made, AFRL, fellow, the highest thing I could achieve in the Air Force Research Lab, I negotiated a position back on Maui, and I was told, shut up and color again. I was like not promoted purposefully, even though I deserved it, like all these things. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm leaving. And then I started the academic thing. And yeah, I'm kind of at that 5-year mark here at UT Austin. I don't know what that means, but at the same time, it's like Privateer shows up as me, co-founding this with Steve and Alex around this time period, which I find to be extremely, interesting. So yeah, I mean, I've basically achieved a lot at any place that I've been, but I failed to be lifelong and have permanence there. But in each failure, there's been success in ways that I couldn't have ever predicted in whatever has come, whatever my next chapter has been.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that whole experience you mentioned around how you put it, voted off the island at Maui, and then you went back and then came back and you weren't being promoted and things were being blocked, and you decided, that's it. I'm kind of done with this. I'm leaving, and went into academia. What was the kind of key learn you took away from that throughout that whole process, and when you kind of made that decision to say enough is enough, I'm getting out of here?
I think the key thing is reminding myself back to the foundation, what's motivating me to be to thrive. It's that interconnectedness and those things that I hold at my core, and then asking myself, can I still do that here? Is there still room for me to be able to, satisfy my dharma, my soul's I consider this my soul's purpose. Can I serve my soul's purpose at any given point? And if I'm finding that the answer is no, or increasingly such, then that's a sign that, I need to move on and do something different, And so it's a very, it's scary. It's a scary thing, but I define courage as the absence of paralysis in the presence of fear. I'm not fearless by any stretch of the imagination. I suffer from anxiety. I have panic attacks. I've been able to mitigate a lot of that stuff, but they still exist. They haven't gone away. So I have a lot of fear in me, but I don't let fear prevent me from satisfying my dharma.
Absolutely. And I think with that, it'd be great. You mentioned there about setting up with Woz and how that's come about. It'd be great if you'd be so kind, tell our listeners how that all started, how Privateer Space came around, where it originated from, how you guys set up, and also what's your mission and where do you see yourselves in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So, basically I can't even remember exactly where I was, but I get lots of phone calls and things like that on a daily basis. My calendar is like double, triple booked, that sort of stuff. And, one of these, contacts was from Alex Fielding. And he's like, look, been following your work for quite some time. And I don't know, do you have time to just talk to me more about what you see are the salient problems with space traffic, space situational awareness, like these sorts of things? So we had a really great conversation for, over an hour, and said our farewell, see you laters. And then, time went by and I didn't hear from him. But then after, a few months, basically, he and Steve get back to me, and it's like, yeah, all the things that you raised, we chased these things down and did our due diligence, and looks like you're right pretty much about everything that you said. And, we'd like to build, this company that basically is founded on this idea of the interconnectedness and stewardship, is founded in your vision of space environmentalism, which we, Steve and I also share. We're tied at the hip and that sort of stuff. And let's do something. We can have a company and do something that is positively beneficial to humanity writ large. And so that's where Privateer was born.
Awesome. And what's your I guess, where do you see your guys being in the next 5 years? What's kind of the mission? Where do you want to be heading?
So I think really we want to be evaluated in the following 3 ways. Foundationally, we're a decision intelligence platform, which means how can we manipulate data and information in such a way as to maximize desired outcomes, where these are rooted in space safety, security, and sustainability. And so the things to measure us by is, how does Privateer's platform make space more transparent? Meaning, what is it? Who does it belong to? What is it doing? What can it do? How do we make space more predictable? Where are things now over the next minutes, hours, days, weeks? And given any common situation between 2 or more space actors, can we predict how they're going to interpret that, behave, react, whatever? And then the last one is, can we develop a body of evidence to help people and at the same time hold them accountable for their behaviors? So, transparency, predictability, accountability are measurable things. And in the next 5 years, we'd love to see a more harmonized use of near Earth space and maybe even cislunar and that sort of stuff, and see a reversal of the environmental detriment of human exploration and activities in space, and basically say, look, the way we've behaved in space exploration and resource utilization, land, air, and ocean, has been to the detriment of those ecosystems. Let's define near Earth space as an additional ecosystem, but let's behave in a manner that really gets to long-term sustainability and doesn't suffer the ills that the other environments have had. And can we use space as humanity's mirror to actually correct and reverse some of the detriment to the other ecosystems? Because humanity gets to know itself a lot more because of what we learn from things in space.
Absolutely. Awesome. I think I speak for everybody as well when I say we're super excited to follow your guys' journey and see where you guys go in the next few years. So thanks again for that. And I've got to ask, I'm sure you probably get bored of this question, but what's it like working with Woz?
I have to tell you that one of the most moving things that I heard him tell me is that basically these ideas that I've had and that he was honored basically to be doing this with me. And he's so smart, both he and Alex. And in fact, I feel like amongst the three of us, the person with the lowest IQ and the least capable of the three is me, if that says anything. And it's like, I'm what people see on the surface of the iceberg in terms of the smarts and stuff, but Alex and Steve are that much more awesome than I am, but they're kind of below the surface kind of stuff. So there you go.
Absolutely. No, amazing. That's incredible. And the next thing I want to talk about was more for advice, and we'll unpack this a little bit more, but I think there's so much advice kind of flying around, a lot of conventional wisdom and stuff. So what would you say sort of over the years, like throughout your career, what's the best and the worst advice that you've been given throughout your career?
I think the best advice is something analogous to, it's not about you and your personal ego in things. Like, there's a greater thing happening, and recognize that this moves at different timescales, and there's a lot that's outside of our control. In fact, pretty much everything is. At best, we can influence. So things that I try to contribute to in everything that I do is, and I ask myself this question: how does this activity feed more into my exposure to humanity and what I'm trying to do, building my credibility in what I'm trying to do with the global community, and my ability to influence, what occurs in this domain and that sort of thing. So exposure, credibility, and influence are the things that I measure myself with every single thing that I do. And if I can't see a path to any of those three things, I don't do it. It's that simple. I don't have time to waste. So I think the best advice has been kind of that. But the worst advice, I think, comes from people that are very parochial and self-serving. Parochial and self-serving, and basically, the idea that the world's out to get you. You got to look out for yourself because nobody else is, and these sorts of things, right? Is just pessimism and kind of this kind of extreme cynicism and that sort of stuff. Any sort of advice that is born from that place is not good.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And what would you say over the years is the best kind of resources that you've identified or utilized over the years for sort of, I guess, gaining knowledge, getting into the space sector? What's kind of the best things that you've identified, whether it be courses, programs, mentors that have kind of helped you to sort of navigate and segue your way into the space industry?
Yeah, man. So this is where I'm going to take a page out of traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous knowledge. One of the tenets is empiricism. So I think, the best resource is to just be mindful, be present, don't be distracted. If you can be present and observe, it won't take you too much time to see patterns. So it's like there's stuff happening all around. The only way to know something is to measure it. So be observant. To be observant, you have to be present. Based on what you observe, there's an emergent pattern, there's structure to what's happening. There's no randomness. So I guess I got to tell people, I really don't believe in randomness. I believe that everything is deterministic, but we're just ignorant. And so if you can be observant, the data that comes from your observations tends to have structure or distributions. That structure and those distributions allows you to infer a model or a hypothesis, and then you can use that model and hypothesis to predict what's going to happen next, here, there, wherever. And the difference between what you observe next and your prediction constitutes surprise. And surprise means that there's something that you have to learn, and you keep in that cycle. So to me, the best resource is actually just applying the scientific method and being very much an experimentalist and trial and error, hypothesis testing. I mean, I put it into these really nerdy sciencey terms, but it's really just observing, man. It's observing and coming up with your own ideas about stuff, and then using those ideas to try to predict, what's going to happen next. And if you're really flawed in your prediction, then that says that there's something that you still haven't understood yet. So it's being curious. It's being curious all the time. And to be curious all the time, it means that you accept that you're ignorant. At any point in time, if you say I'm no longer ignorant, then you stop looking. And when you stop looking, you become stale and you're done. So you always have to accept that you're ignorant, keep yourself curious, be observant, and always try to improve your understanding by your ability to predict what's going to happen.
100%. I think it sounds so simple to say you need to be present and you need to focus and be observant. But I think in the modern day with technology and like over information everywhere we turn, being present can actually be quite challenging. So being able to actually stay focused and stay in the room is 100%. I couldn't agree more. And kind of having that self-awareness and that, I guess, that no ego, no kind of inner ego to stay ignorant and stay kind of hungry and always determined to learn regardless what situation you're in.
Exactly. You bet.
Cool. Well, look, I just want to say we've got one sort of final question we like to close out every single episode with. But before I ask you that, I just want to say again, thanks ever so much. This has been awesome, by the way. So thank you for being sort of so open and vulnerable and transparent of everything and taking us through your journey and telling our listeners. So I just want to say thanks ever so much again for coming on the show and doing this with us today. The final question we like to ask all of our guests is, what advice for anyone that's kind of looking to get into the space sector? And again, this is what we kind of predicated this whole podcast on, is making it accessible for everybody. We need to keep on growing this sector and raising awareness and getting people from other sectors with transferable skills to keep this thing growing. So what advice would you have for anyone looking to enter into the space sector in 2022 and beyond?
I think the best thing that people can do, and I just came from a TED conference, the annual TED conference in Vancouver. And this was, somebody gave a talk about climate action, and they had three circles, like a Venn diagram. One of them is, what are you good at? The other one was, what brings you joy? And the other circle is, what needs doing? So what are you good at? What brings you joy? What needs doing? I think anybody who wants to enter in the space sector needs to be able to write a list, and it doesn't have to be long, filling in those three circles. And then the action to be taken is the intersection of those three, if those three things intersect. So it's good to know if they intersect, because the intersection of the three is basically, that's the action that you want in getting into the space community. And so being very honest with yourself at what are you good at and what brings you joy, those two things need to coexist. And then look at what are the things what are the challenges? What are the things yet to be done? And can the combination of what I'm good at and what brings me joy be applied to solving those things that need to be done?
Absolutely. Awesome. Moriba, thank you so much. I appreciate everything today, all the knowledge, sharing your experiences with our listeners and myself. Really, really appreciate it. Great to speak to you. Take care and hope all goes well at Privateer, and speak to you soon.
From your lips to God's ear, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.